A letter from Hewler Silverfox, Chancellor of the Grey College, City of Greyhawk, to Asahe Tavra, Consul General of the Brotherhood of the Scarlet Sign. Honorable Asahe, I am writing in regard to your organization's request to hold a rally on our humble campus during the Festival of High Summer. I have reviewed your application and, moreover, I have done as you requested and set aside any preconceived notions I may have had about your group in order that I might fairly assess your right to be heard and my obligation as an educator to present a multiplicity of views to the students in my charge. To this end, I have spent a good many hours studying the Brotherhood, its history, its structure, its beliefs, and its practices. I have consulted both scholarly studies and the original writings of the Brotherhood itself, and I am afraid I must, after some great consideration, deny your request for the following reasons. Firstly, I find the claims of your organization to be wholly lacking in academic merit. Not only are your foundational documents poorly drafted and ahistorical, they are also steeped in logical, scientific, and arcane fallacy, using long-debunked theories of divine provenance to justify a philosophy of deep and uncompromising racism. Secondly, were I somehow able to overlook these intellectual failings under the guise of presenting differing viewpoints, I would still need to consider my obligation to the student body. In my charge are faculty from Zeif and Hepmanland, and students from as far away as Zindia and Muir. Our institution has been fully integrated since Lord Mayor Zagig personally escorted Dacian Corinax, our first Tiefling student, onto campus 250 years ago. I would be doing them a grave disservice were I to sanction on this campus, which many of them consider to be their home, a group whose fundamental principles include the denial of their basic dignity, a constant threat to their safety, and a cruel dismissal of their right to exist as equals in this world. Thus, again, it is with my deepest apologies that I must decline your request. Kindly do go fuck yourself. Hewler Silverfox, Chancellor of the Grey College, City of Greyhawk. In the city of Greyhawk, 5 individuals are united by circumstance. A brewer priest, a haunted swordsman, a living relic, a caustic criminal, and a golem without a past. With the drawing of a single card, their lives have been turned upside down. Welcome to The Chimera, a role-playing adventure podcast. Our campaign this season is called Misplaced. It takes place in the venerable setting of Greyhawk, kind of, and we're playing with a modified version of 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I'm Vin LeBate, and I play Golden Hydrakashi, a Dragonborn rogue. Joining me today are...
I'm Braden Lamb, and I'm playing Balmo, a halfling cleric.
I'm Jeffrey Bard, and I play Sir Simeon, the human sword mage.
I'm Josh Hallbachner, and I play Ashlar, a warforged sorcerer.
I'm Kacey Smith, and I play Latchkey, a shardmind with the dual classes of Battlemind and Scion.
And I'm Kelly Weissman Asprooth Jackson, the Dungeon Master.
Just a quick note, this episode is a little on the short side. We had technical problems with like 3 different applications, and then our resident physician got called away to, presumably, deliver a litter of adorable snuggly kittens. But don't worry, we'll be back to our regular length next time. Now, let's get started.
Okay, everybody. So, last time that we were adventuring with our good friends, the 5 acquaintances, they were in the middle of the jungle. They'd stumbled onto a path that has sort of been cut through it relatively recently by some sort of fairly large group of armed persons. They came across a goblin that was in trouble, had run afoul of some local fauna, maybe flora, sort of ambiguous how we're going to categorize that stump monster, and helped the goblin to eke out a victory over the stump monster, leaving it wounded and sort of pinned, and rescued this goblin, and then immediately sort of took the goblin prisoner. And as a reminder, the goblin is wearing armor that marks it as somehow in the service to the Scarlet Brotherhood, who are a group of Sul supremacists, Sul being the sort of blonde, redhead, and albino strand of the paler end of humanity in this setting. And yes, I believe where we had left off is that the goblin was tied up and had offered in a way that was really obvious because he rolled a natural 1 to show you to the camp where the rest of its compatriots are, because it wants its compatriots to kill you. So that's where we were.
After we saved him.
After you saved him. What an ungrateful little goblin.
This has a useful lesson for all of us, really.
No good goblin deed goes ungoblin punished.
No, just don't save Nazis.
Yes.
Don't say
Right.
Don't do it.
We should have punched
When
him
you
instead.
give a Nazi the benefit of the doubt, this is what happens.
More fool us.
You get goose stepped on.
I'm very comfortable with that being the
Yeah.
message of my game. I'm on board with that. So, I think we may want to have a little bit more of a conversation with the goblin, and then we want to see what we're going to do. But first, I want to have a couple of flashbacks.
Ooh.
So we're going to start, I think, with Rakashi. So this sequence of flashbacks is not, we're not going back to play a game. I'm just sort of telling you that up front. This is like a series of informational flashbacks. You're welcome to establish what your character does in the situation, but it's mostly there.
Okay.
My point is to show you something,
Mhm.
and how you. So it's not like you're going back to solve a problem and we're not going to roll any dice. It's sort of like, okay, this thing, I want you to have this memory about this thing now. So this is a memory back from before the Orgnensian Syndicate got broken up, when Rakashi was probably still relatively young, like maybe in adolescence, let's say.
Mhm.
And the memory is of the first time that Rakashi saw that mark, the Scarlet Sign, which is the emblem of the Scarlet Brotherhood, which, as we established, is an equilateral cross. It looks like it's made out of Kree blades, right? The sort of those swirly back and forth daggers, and it's red.
Mhm.
So Rakashi was in Org's office, which is a relatively modest but still nice gentleman's office. And there was this guy who had been trying to sell Org on some sort of a criminal collaboration of some type. It wasn't, the details were not given to Rakashi when she was shown what was going on. And Org had not liked the terms that were being offered and had this guy restrained. He had his shirt pulled off, and then this guy had the tattoo over his heart, marking him as an agent of the Scarlet Brotherhood. Org, Rakashi remembers this very well. Org pointed to this tattoo, looked at the guy and said, "I may not make an honest gold coin, but I'm a Greyhawk thief through and through." And he looked at Rakashi. He said, "We work with who we work with. Dro, fine. Mind flayers, fine. Demons, if the money's right, that's fine. These creeps we don't work with." And then he went to his desk, and out of a particular drawer, he drew out an object that Rakashi only saw a few times in the period that she was in Org's employ. As Org opens the drawer, there is a pretty bright glow. And from the drawer, he draws out a very elaborate quill pen that's glowing, brightly colored. It's a quill pen, I say, but it has sort of some... it doesn't look like it's made out of feathers so much as it looks like it's made out of feathers that are made out of energy. And he takes this quill pen over to the fellow with the tattoo, and he says, "I've got a message for the people you work for." And the guy by now is very afraid and says, I'll take back any message you want. That's fine. I'll deliver the message." He said, No. I'll write it out myself. And he starts to write into the guy's flesh with the pen. Obviously very painful for the agent of the Scarlet Brotherhood. That's the memory.
Okay.
Any questions?
No, I think that was pretty clear.
Very good. Very good. And Latchkey, there's a memory for you from soon after Latchkey became a single being, soon after the beginning of what is now Latchkey's life.
Mm-hmm.
And there was during this period before they had separated from Warren's Starcoat, they spent some time just sort of wandering around the Silvery Manor and looking through his things, because that's what there was to do. It was kind of like just becoming acclimated to the world, and everything was a new experience. So at one point, Latchkey was in one of Warren's libraries. He had several, and was leafing through one of the books from one of the shelves. And Warren's happened to come by and noticed that they were looking at one of his old journals, and started to wax nostalgic about that period. That's the third volume of my journal from during the Greyhawk Wars. It was a very exciting time in my life. I had just become a cadet member of the Circle of Eight. It was quite thrilling, going on adventures and fighting against the Scarlet Brotherhood and all sorts of nefarious evils. And he sort of looks over Latchkey's shoulder and says, those are the notes for a spell that I devised when I was a much younger man, to get my revenge on anyone who might try to kill me. The page explains, and while Latchkey didn't and still doesn't have the full magical knowledge to maybe enact the spell themselves, there's some explanations in common that are decipherable to them. Explains how it will leave a permanent mark on anyone who kills the person who has cast this on themselves. So it's sort of like a way of finding your murderer, right? Way of marking them permanently. And then Warren says, but that was when I was young and foolish and thought that there would ever be a day when I might die. Any questions or responses?
No, that's good.
Good. And then I have one for Sarsimian too. This is from shortly after Callista had left.
Okay.
She had to go home, as you recall. She was recalled to the kingdom of her birth in Nyrond? Nyrond.
Yeah, Nyrond.
And then eventually word came back that she never actually made it home, that she had disappeared sometime in the journey. Briefly, there was a diplomatic issue about did she actually leave, but they were able to confirm that she had gone out on the road and she had left the Baclunish Basin and made it back into the Fleneus, but she never actually made it back to Nyrond. And so after Sarsimian made the decision that he was going to go find her, he felt compelled to go home one more time to the Plains of the Paynims and to sort of say goodbye to his people.
Gotcha.
And when he came home, it was at the time of a seasonal annual festival at Tovag Baragu, which is the only physical ruin that remains from the ancient Baclunish Empire. The empire was destroyed by the Sul Imperium in the Invoked Devastation, and the Invoked Devastation eradicated everything that the empire had built. It literally turned every stone in its cities to dust. It dried up all the wells. It caused all the wheat and other crops in the fields to turn to ash. There was nothing left. All the people were left unharmed, but they immediately began to starve. But everything was destroyed except for Tovag Baragu, which is this giant circle of many, many different standing stones that form archways. It's the only remnant of the ancient empire. And every year, the Paynims have a festival where they go and they light fires there, and there's a feast. And at night, they just watch the archways, because it's said that there are creatures from other worlds and faces from other times that move and pass between the doorways of the arches. And it was on the second night of the festival, Sarsimian was watching the archway, and he could see very clearly one of the archways. This complex is enormous. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about it's more than a couple miles across. It's got a lot of different gates, but he could see far enough away that he couldn't even think to run to it in time. He could see a figure that he would swear was Callista move from one of the archways and across to another one and pass out of view again. So those are the memories. Now, we have a goblin, whose name, by the way, is Yibdob. Y-B-D-O-B. Yibdob. What do you want to do to interrogate this goblin? Or, I mean, do you? It's up to you. But
Oh, I do. I think the first thing we do is like probably Rakashi just throws him into like a fireman's carry once he's properly bound and looks at everyone else. We should probably find a safe place to sit down before we deal with this shit.
All right, we're still kind of running from the giant lobster, aren't we?
Well, the giant lobster was moving much slower than you were and making a terrible racket doing it. And you haven't heard any of those noises for a couple hours now. So I wouldn't necessarily say you're not running from it, but it's not like it's in hot pursuit.
But this guy also has some boys out here.
Somewhere.
So
This conversation is in common, I'm assuming?
yes.
So far, you've only talked to the goblin in Goblin, so it's ambiguous as to whether or not it speaks common.
Yeah, I'm going to presume that it does, but yeah. Yeah, so we should find at least a place where we'll notice if someone is coming in from a different angle.
So there's you're basically on a trail, right? And if you step off of that trail and into the undergrowth and back between the trees, you have the disadvantage that you can't see very far in any one direction, but you have the advantage that unless somebody knows this, if someone was like really stealthy, they're not in a position to sneak up on you exactly because it's a jungle. You have to move through the jungle in order to get to you. That's not hard to find a place like that.
Yeah, so maybe we'll just move off the trail like a couple hundred yards.
Sure.
Find like a nice like base of a tree to prop this guy up against.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the first thing I'll do is check to see if he has that same tattoo. Like to see if he's gone through the whole process of being marked.
So let's see. His there's like a shirt he's wearing over his mail. The color aesthetics of the Scarlet Brotherhood are red and white. And he has like a white, I mean, the word I want to use is Cossack, although it's not a religious.
Like a tabard?
Tabard. There we go. He has a white tabard with the red scarlet sign on it. Does he have a tattoo? I'm going to say that in examining this goblin, you can find that he does have a tattoo on his right wrist. He doesn't have one over his heart.
Do I think that would be significant, or is that just a matter of taste?
So these guys are...
I could make like a history roll for this.
Yeah, sure. You want to give me one? That's fine. See what you can sort of jive, or see how it jives with your knowledge of the Scarlet Brotherhood.
Not much. That was a 9.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really... You're not going to get any insights out of a 9. Here's what I'll say. These people they believe in the supremacy of a particular strand of human beings. They don't think well of other species, but they do employ some of them. So basically, the person who had the scarlet mark over his heart was a human, and though it's probably especially hard for Rakashi to tell because all humans look alike, was probably Sul, or at least somewhat like had Sul ancestry. So, like, I'll just sort of say one plausible explanation here is they don't put that tattoo over your heart if you're not a human, Sul human, or at least partially Sul.
Okay, then probably it's time to get down to business. Yes, I'm going to sort of wedge him up against like a big tree. So, let's start with the most important thing. Where the fuck are we right now?
The goblin looks at you and sort of bottles it up for a second, then it doesn't even know where it is.
I'm assuming you're trying for like an intimidation roll here, Vin.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sidle up next to Rakashi and cross my arms and just kind of stand there. And I would like to add 5 to any roll he does next. Just giving him added weight.
All right. Do you want to tell me the move and then give me the roll?
Yes, I'm probably gonna pull a sword.
Mm-hmm.
And not get real right up, but just like casually sort of like wave it in his face. Look, buddy, I have had a day, and I don't know where you're from. I don't know if you recognize the cut of this armor. Maybe it has a little significance to you. I've dealt with people like you in the past. So why don't you tell me what the fuck I want to know? Because otherwise I have no reason to keep you alive. I was going to give you the benefit of the doubt back when you were just some random ass goblin 10 minutes ago. But this suit pisses me off. So talk or we're done with you. And I rolled a 9, which gives me a 22.
Plus my 5.
Plus 5.
The goblin, who I'm assuming is still bound, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. friend, there's no reason to be threatening. We're all stranded on the same island together. We can all cooperate. There's no reason to be so menacing. I'm not here to hurt you. You're not here to hurt me. We're all going to get along quite swimmingly, I'm sure. So, yes, where are you? The place is called, and then he gives a name that is not in Goblin. Like, you can tell it doesn't have the right sounds. It's some phrase that doesn't match the language that he's speaking to you in at all. That's what my masters call it. That's what we call it here. That's where we came with the expedition to visit. Yes.
So you're here on purpose?
Yes, we are here to find ancient relics of the grand and glorious Sul Imperium, to reclaim the wondrous artifacts of the ages, to lift up again the grand and glorious might of all that is the beauty and power of the Sul.
Hey, sidebar, do you give a shit about the Sul? You don't exactly have a Sul look about you.
I follow the instructions of my commander, who follows the instruction of his commander, who follows the instruction of my masters.
Okay, you're a guy who does a job. I can. She pats him on the arm. I can relate to that. I have been there. I was raised there.
Now, just real quick. So without speaking the language, it's not really clear that there's this weird name that it listed off or anything.
I mean, it's like, look, if I'm talking in French, right, and you don't speak French, and then I slip into Japanese, you got a shot at noticing that there was something different about the words I just spoke, right?
Yep.
It's about that different.
I'll probably also repeat those words out loud, just like echo them after.
Yeah. So those are not words that anybody from a language anybody in the party speaks. But again, I think, how does this work? No, okay. I believe we've established Latchkey's telepathy is one way, so it allows Latchkey to speak to other people through their mind, but Latchkey's still dependent on their language in order to.
Let me double check that.
Why don't you double check that, Josh? You were going to say something while Casey's looking that up.
I was going to say, hearing something like that, I'd at least like to try to see if I can place anything of it. My basic theory here is that, given that Ash is kind of, a prodigal son from where he grew up, and all the different stuff that kind of comes through, I figure that he probably at least has some kind of standard resources that he's used to referencing for kind of geography, including like weird magical thing. So I can just imagine like this normal scene of him back at his shop with kind of this like magical atlas open where he's kind of, flipping through it, and then he has like a kind of a vellum map laid out somewhere without any names, and then he's kind of flipping through, and then he's kind of like, writing little things down and putting them on to see if he can remember everything well enough. So just to kind of establish that, like, if there's anything, if there's any scenario where this is something he would have run into with that type of knowledge, that he probably would have.
So the question is, so we know that Ash has sort of a grab bag of information, because that's sort of necessary to being an antiquities dealer.
Yep.
Would this name ring a bell for Ash on the basis of that? Is the question.
Right.
Give me a history check. Sure.
Okay. 18?
Okay. Ash recognizes that it's a phrase that it's like Brigadoon, right? It's like a mythical thing. It's not something that Ash would have necessarily thought was real, but it's a story that's out there. He recognizes the origin. It's definitely Sewell. And if he remembers correctly, the meaning of the phrase in Sewell is the place of the chimera.
Okay.
Really?
I'm going to lean over to the rest of the group and say, Balmo, my friend, I'm afraid I have some bad news.
More bad news?
You were wrong about where we are.
That's bad news? that we're not in the abyss?
I explain, basically the picture that I just got from that. And I make a point of punctuating it with one of the Chimera cards at the end for emphasis.
Okay.
So for Latchkey's abilities, as far as being a shard mind, it just says they can communicate telepathically with any creature that has a language to a range of 5, but I don't know if that's because they need to hear them speak.
And it is communicate. So it is two-way. So Latchkey should be able to understand what the conversation is.
Yeah, I also have, particularly when they're purple, send thoughts, which is specifically two-way telepathic communication with any creature you can see.
Okay, good to know.
So, what do they hear when this goblin?
Unfortunately,
that name.
Well, not unfortunately, but that's you. The party now already has the information that would have.
Okay,
right?
That's fine.
That it's that the meaning of the phrase is the place of the chimera. So you can confirm what Ash only could remember a little bit distantly.
Gotcha. So they just sort of nod in agreement at Ash's explanation.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarsimian, can you give me a history check, please?
Yes, I can. 28.
You recognize the term "the place of the chimera" as one of the alternative names for a more famous legend among sailors and travelers called the Isle of Dread.
The Isle of Dread.
The Isle of Dread. An island, or maybe an island group, that appears and disappears at random out in the ocean, that sailors claim to see on the horizon, but then can't find again, that people get lost in and never return from.
Okay, well, I share that with the party, too. Yeah. I mean, the fact that it's called the Isle of the Chimera is really creepy to me. I mean, everybody else is weirded out by that too, right?
There's just been a lot of chimera going on.
Too much, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
It's like something new that we were coming, something new, or somebody new. The Chimera Project. I don't know. This is all above my head.
If anything, I'm comforted by the consistency here.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Whereas Isle of Dread, I don't get. If nobody has landed on it, and the people who have landed on it disappear, why is it so dreadful? They didn't come back to tell us how dreadful it is.
Yeah, maybe it's the Isle of anticipatory dread, but actually very nice times had by all.
There's just one word for that in Elvish.
Linguistics jokes.
Like, why isn't it called Big Candy Island?
Apes, but they ain't so big.
I think it's usually bad when people disappear.
I mean, I've disappeared some people before. It's been fine for me.
How has it
Not for
been
the people who
them?
disappeared.
Yeah.
Well, they stopped complaining eventually.
Ugh.
Ben, I think it sounded like you were about to ask Yibdov another question.
Yeah. So, follow up based on that bit that you said before we did a little sidebar over here. Y'all are also stuck here, huh?
Well, only in the sense that we don't have an obvious way home.
How'd that happen?
My masters burned the ships in order to inspire us in our search for objects of glory and greatness from the Sul Imperium.
Oh.
This does not make a great deal of sense unless one of these objects would be able to return you home.
That may be the case. Ours is not to reason why.
That's true. I gag him again.
Okay, he's gagged.
Oh, was Latchkey communicating telepathically there, or speaking in common?
Latchkey actually only communicates telepathically,
Oh,
as I understand it. So
But they do tend to move their lips because it makes fewer people freak out and notice it.
Okay, so that somewhat reaffirms the practical end of our situation. Yeah, I'm out of ideas.
Balmo, tell us more about this god who takes the form of the chimera.
Oh boy. I'm assuming I'm gonna have to make a roll for that.
I think it's more fun if you do.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Okay. Well, all right. 16 plus. Sorry, bring up my sheet here. 16 plus 9. Yeah, that's 25.
Oh yeah, you can give a lot of information here. So Haramathur was the husband of Arathis. He's the father of the three gods of war, all of whom died in or shortly after the Dawn War. So none of them are famous anymore. They've all there was a lot of upheaval during the Dawn. So basically there was this period at the beginning of time where there were a bunch of gods, probably almost twice as many as there are now. And a lot of them got killed in the course of the conflict with the primordials. And so it's like pretty arcane information, like the name of this god or that god, because they don't exist anymore. They haven't existed essentially the whole time that there's been human religion.
But I did literally just read that chapter the other day.
Exactly. So I'm explaining. You just read it, so it's fine that you have the information at your fingertips. I'm just sort of reminding the party of like, why don't they know this? It's like stuff that isn't in common understanding, because this is literally like we are getting into the level of does your average Christian know all of the angelic hierarchies in obtuse Christian angelology? No, they do not. But the information's there.
Or all the grandchildren of Adam and Eve.
Sure, right. Knowing all of the begats in Genesis? No, nobody knows that. So he's the husband of Arathis. He's originally the god of law and continuity and order, whereas Arathis was originally the goddess of invention and ingenuity and imagination. After he died, she took on his portfolio, which is why she's the goddess of civilization generally. She basically started out as kind of half of that and took on the rest of it after he died. There's not a ton of information about him in the record of the Dawn War because he died during it, but it speaks well of him. He essentially sacrificed himself in order to save the rest of the gods and to protect the astral sea from being overwhelmed by an attack from the primordials. And let's see, since you did roll well, I can give you a little bit more information than that. Haramathur saved the astral sea from an all-out invasion by primordials, Oberiths. Oberiths are essentially god-level powers from the far realm, from the space beyond existence, that came through the living gate after it was shattered, or before it was shattered, rather. So an assault by Oberiths and Primordials and Demon Princes, in which Yivtan, the Shattered Reflection, one of the Oberiths, was at the vanguard of the fight, and he actually, Hermithra, died in battle with Yivtan. And at the end of their battle, it pushed the Astral Sea and the Primordial Chaos further apart and kind of left them hanging there in what used to be space and was now nothing. So his body was never recovered.
Mm.
Yikes.
Interesting.
And remind me, I know I've got Harmony of Arathis. Right, because Wenta is an exarch of Arathis?
That's right.
Okay, so there's a pretty strong connection there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think I found a new reason to be here.
What about the rest of us?
Oh, sorry about that. There's beer.
I think we left the beer on the beach.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, we're gonna have to circle around for that
Uh-huh.
once this all dies down a bit.
Well, or as soon as we can find some fresh water and take an hour or two. I can whip up something else. I believe so. I think that's one of the rituals I have is create holy water, which for Balmo is beer.
Nice.
That is the best news that I've heard since we got here.
One of the many reasons I was happy to be on the boat with you.
Latchkey is going to ask the goblin, how many are in your group?
How many what?
How many came with you?
Oh, just a second. When we arrived, we were 60.
I don't like that phrasing.
Mhm.
How many are there now?
39.
That's really exact.
Well, I haven't checked in for a few hours.
What reduced your numbers?
The locals call this particular island in the archipelago the Island of Monsters. That's fairly accurate.
Okay, another question about word choice. Locals?
Yes, there are some Flan mud people who live on some of the adjacent islands. We captured a few of them early on, tried to use them as laborers, but they were too good at escaping.
She covers up his mouth again. Sorry, you guys ever heard of mud people?
You said what? Slan?
Flan, that's one of the other divisions of the human family on Orth.
Oh, Flan. Gotcha.
Essentially,
For some reason, I thought you said Slan.
Essentially, I mean, while it is a crude metaphor, the Sul are like fair-haired Northern Europeans. The Oridians are more dark-featured Europeans. The Baklunish are Arabs, and the Flan are Native Americans, roughly speaking, in terms of the equivalent to actual real-world stuff.
All right, so we're not talking about JRPG slimes.
No, we're talking about racists.
Yeah. Talking pejoratives.
Yeah, it's an important distinction to draw in D&D terms.
There are actual mud people. This is one of the many reasons why racism is even stupider in D&D.
Right. So we have potentially 39 hostile individuals somewhere on this island. Confirmation of this being a chain of islands in some capacity, at least if we are to believe this small individual's words.
Ask it if it's seen the opposite shore.
I do that.
And by opposite shore, you mean...
I guess from where we just were.
So basically, Rakashi's going to do something like, see that way? Have you seen the water on the other side?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, we've sailed around the island once when we made a map of it, and to 2 of the adjacent islands as well, before we gave up on the whole capturing the locals for labor plan.
Does it have a map?
No, but my masters do.
Are there any locals on this island?
They stay away from it because it's full of monsters.
Sensible.
So I'm sort of having a feeling that we might want to go back for that longboat and move to a non-monster island. Maybe that's just my personal priorities.
The question is where that monster that we fled from is in relation to us and the longboat.
I mean, if we can get that map, that'll be easier to find a good island. Maybe Big Candy Island.
You keep saying that. If one of these islands is not covered in candy, I'm going to be extremely angry.
As will I.
Does candy go well with beer?
Certain kinds. A goes or other kind of sour beer. He starts describing a plum goes that he had one time
I grab Rakashi and try to move away from this and back to the interrogation. See what we can get from it about their camp layout. I think getting the map is a wise choice at this stage.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Also, Rakashi, what was he doing out here by himself?
Good question.
Yeah, both those things.
I was scouting the area, making sure that there were no one was around to interfere, and that there were no monsters threatening the camp. And then in terms of the layout, he says about a mile and a half further down the trail, the large clearing we've been working on to excavate the area around the giant cube is where most of us are gathered, those that aren't scouting out to protect the camp, as I said.
Giant cube.
This is what my masters are so interested in, the giant metal cube that floats in the sky.
Suddenly that is what we are very interested in as well.
Disagree.
Okay, so does it seem plausible that that there's a place where we could get to a vantage point to observe this at all without drawing attention?
So
I mean, if it's in the sky.
Yeah. I mean, what he's said and what he'll explain in more detail if you want to draw it out of him is basically there's a section of the jungle where there's this giant metal cube floating in/over it, and they've been clearing the area around it for whatever esoteric. They're trying to dig up ruins essentially that are part of it or something. I mean, it's not going to be clear to him because he's just a grunt exactly why they're doing what they're doing, but clearly the people who are in charge of his expedition are very interested in this cube. They want to get inside this cube. They haven't figured out how to get inside this cube yet. It's just floating in the jungle, so you should be able, if you can sneak up to the area where it is, you can get a pretty good look at it from within the jungle. I mean, you'll be at the mercy of whether or not their scouts can find you, depending on how stealthy you want to be, right? But it shouldn't be hard to. The people in the camp are focused on things like clearing trees and digging stuff. So, yeah, it should be plausible to go get a look at this thing.
Yeah, so maybe we should see if we can find a view, and then I can maybe get down into the camp, grab a map, and then we can totally ignore this cube and leave.
And what are we just carrying the obelisk with us this whole time?
I think Ash was in charge of moving it.
Yeah, what do you mean we?
Or, I mean, like, is the obelisk with the party still?
Yes, I have carried the obelisk with us.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think checking out this cube is probably worth a shot.
I'm sorry, I think you meant to say camp. But I heard cube. Fuck the cube.
Fuck the cube.
That's my official position.
Okay. Any particular strategy you want to use in approaching the camp / cube? I mean, are you all going? Are you not specifically not all going? That's the biggest question, I think.
This goblin, can we get a sense for why this goblin's hooked up with the Sewell? Like, can we pay him off? Can we make him our friend and not their friend?
Okay. So
is there any motivations there?
To use?
I'm assuming I can't talk to him directly.
Yeah, I mean, unless you speak Goblin, we don't. We don't have an established shared language for the two of you. So right now, the members of the party who seem able to talk to Yibdab are Latchkey and Rakashi. So,
and I can talk at him.
Yep, that's true. Balmo always has the option of talking at somebody. So any of those,
I think Rakashi would be the best person to have that conversation.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't you make your pitch to Rakashi about what you think should happen, and see if you can convince Rakashi to start that line of questioning.
Balmo also steps in and holds up his tankard and says, "Well, tell him he can have a little draft if he plays well."
Okay. Here's the deal. We have access to beer. We theoretically have access to money at some point. And we don't immediately consider you an inferior and expendable type of creature. So, how loyal are you to your bosses? Really?
Ooh, can I add a little bit to this roll?
Okay.
With some Harmony of Arathis, a +2 to the next ability check or skill check, and just a little raise of the tankard, and says, "A toast to those who wish us well, and all the rest can go to hell."
This feels like a diplomacy check then.
Oh, that's a thing I don't actually have. But I do have charisma. Is Sarsimian also tossing a bonus my way?
Yeah, I mean, if Kelly will let me, I can only do non-verbal things.
Yeah, but you have a magical ability that lets you give skill bonuses out, so.
Okay. I'll give it.
All right. So that's an 11 plus 3 for charisma plus 7 from those dudes.
Sounds right. So
21.
21.
Blackjack.
Is 21 good enough to make somebody give up their job? Interesting. It's an interesting
how
question.
good the job is.
Yeah, no, because it's not like he's not like somebody that they went and paid some gold pieces to and then put him on a ship. This is like he's been raised to do this. Well,
come on, good old Jib Jab.
One of the hobgoblin overseers was very mean to me. If I help you, you will let me beat him?
Oh, friend, you are speaking my language. Let's go get this shit done.
Okay, Yibdab's on your side. So they'll happily show you, here's the entrance to the camp. It's not terribly well defended in a abstract sense. Like, it's not like set up like a fort or anything, because it's basically, Yibdab doesn't use this term, but what it basically is it's an archaeological site. That's why they have these scouts out sort of circling the area and trying to see, if there are any threats coming. But everybody in the camp is armed. So it's kind of easy to get close to and then very dangerous to enter. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna look at Yibdab. Can I borrow your thing that we just had the word for? It's not a tabard. Was it a tabard?
Oh, right. It was a tabard.
Tabard, yeah.
Yep.
Can I borrow your tabard?
He's not attached to it. Sure.
So I'm going to put that on over my armor. I'm not wearing my coat because it's presumably pretty warm here. And then Rakashi sort of like turns, and it's sort of like she moves into another face, and she now has the appearance of a sort of generic soulish human.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. You guys try and keep everything quiet. And tell me about this hobgoblin that I should probably not all the way kill. I just get a description.
Yeah, I'll say that there's like a distinguishing scar on his cheek or something. Like there's going to be a bunch of hobgoblins.
Yeah.
So you have a sense of one that maybe you shouldn't kill all the way. So if you want to check Roll20, I've put up the map for the encampment.
Oh.
So as I said, it's pretty easy to get close to. So close enough, at least, that through the trees you can see at least some of these details. You can certainly see the cube, which is an enormous cube. It appears to be made of black iron, at least from a inspection at this distance. It's about 100 feet on a given side, and it's floating about another 100 feet off the ground, which is tall enough that it starts below the tree line and for the most part extends above the tree line. And they have been clearing away trees and other things from this area. So if you look at if you're able to see the map, here's what you're going to see.
Hang on. I cannot see the map.
No, the only map I see is the one from
beach.
around the ship. Yeah.
Yeah, I just hit
Okay.
reload on Roll20, so I'll see if that does it.
Okay.
I just
See if that does
reloaded
it.
and I don't have it.
Is it like a separate file or something? It's not the same map, right? It's a different map.
Oh, it's a different map. Yeah. From my perspective, there's a thing that I can just go load a new page, and so I loaded that page.
I'm sure Roll20 has some weird button you have to press to actually send it to us.
That's sort of its thing. Is we buried this incredibly important button 3 levels deep in something that's not labeled even marginally for it. Okay, so I can see it.
Oh, hold on one sec. Hello? Yep. Okay. Okay, I'll be there in a minute. Okay, bye.
Oh no.
I just got called in.
Uncalled. Okay.
Uncalled.
Well, good luck to the animal.
Yeah, wish him luck. Okay, I guess, Latchkey hasn't been talking a lot, so if you guys want to keep going, they can just sort of be chilling in the background.
That would work if it wasn't for the fact that your character was about to have a critical flashback.
God damn it.
Unfortunately. We will have to continue this another time. And in that time, I will try and figure out how to get this map visible to all of you. That's ridiculous that I can't. Doesn't make any sense, really.
That's it this week for the Chimera. Our theme music is Hoof, Heart, and Hiss by Matt Weber. You can find a link to more of Matt's work in the show notes. You can also find us online at thechimera.space or on Twitter and Facebook at ChimeraPod. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or just telling your friends. Join us back here in 2 weeks for the next episode, and thanks for listening.